Let me invite to the stage David Mowat. David is the partner, or the chief partner, in Circularity Capital Investments. David, welcome to the stage. Let's give David a warm round of applause, if we may. Now, we're going to move from the broad topic, as it were, of the potential role of a bank in an ecological, an unfolding ecological disaster that Gary described, to the movement around circularity, and particularly the application of investment to circularity processes. And David, there couldn't be a better person to have to talk about this.
I hope so.
So, well, we're absolutely sure of that. We're delighted to have you here. So maybe what we could start with is I'm going to ask David a few questions, then I'm going to invite you to submit some questions. Please start to submit those questions, and please start to favourite or prioritise or preference questions asked by others so that we can see which questions are the ones in the room that you most want asked. But David, if we can kick off, I just want to ask you first, what are the important trends and the specificities in circularity investing that you're involved with and you see? What's the market in which you work?
Well, I mean, we set up Circularity Capital with a simple mission, which was to support SME innovation and growth across the circular economy, across Europe. We are currently investing our second fund. We've raised about 300 million euros so far. We're a growth stage investor, so not seed or early stage, but businesses that have proven traction. The main trends that we see, and there are a number of trends, and then I think it's also worth reflecting on some of the key challenges that we're trying to address. I mean, trends like corporate necessity, the continual need for improved return on capital is a commercial need, but equally the enhanced importance of sustainability credentials and performance, and we've seen that across numerous corporates, some more progressive than others, some clearly playing catch up. There's consumer pressure. We do see evidence that consumers are becoming more influenced by the environmental impact of what they buy. There are other drivers as well, commercial, flexibility, convenience, etc. But sustainability is increasing there. We have regulatory pressure and tailwinds, which is good. A regulatory environment alone doesn't necessarily make a good investment case, but it's a very useful tailwind. But we also have continued development and innovation in materials, in solutions, and particularly in technology as enabling solutions to allow businesses to become more circular. But if I go back to the rationale for the circular economy and for investing in the circular economy, and really the purpose behind it, I think, which is critically important.
I think if you even go back before that, just in case there's anyone in the room who's not absolutely clear what we mean by the circular economy, just spend a couple of sentences on that as well.
Well, I hope that will become evident as we go through, because we'll touch... the best way this comes to life is when we talk about companies that are actually operating in the circular economy, and maybe we can come on to that. But I think if we look at Gary's charts and the split of global emissions, slightly more than half of that is energy and transport, and there are many solutions in place for that. About 45% is consumption. It's what we do every day. It's how we eat. It's what we buy. Every time we click purchase on Amazon or an online shop, we trigger this horribly wasteful linear supply chain that is hugely pollutive and wasteful. And fundamentally that needs to stop, but there is a solution for that, which is the circular economy. And it addresses that question of consumption, and addresses that sort of linear take, make, dispose economy. And a few examples of that some of which were referenced last night at the dinner. Food waste, a major challenge. 1/3 of all food that's produced is never consumed. That's horrific. And I think, as was mentioned last night, if food waste was a country, it would have the third highest carbon footprint in the world, behind the US and China.
If food waste were a country, it would
Yep.
have the third highest carbon footprint in the world. Right.
I mean, stunning.
Yeah.
Stunning, and very scary. But, you know, the economic cost of that in waste is $950 billion a year. The environmental waste is 3.3 gigatons of GHG emissions. So that, I'd like people to hang on to that, because it's important then when we talk about the collinearity of returns that we can get from investment. Plastic packaging, I mean, another example, it's close to our heart for one of our portfolio companies, but the European food service market goes through 20 billion plastic trays a year. Now, you treble that when you add in retail, so food to go from retailers. 85% of that is made from rigid plastic. Only 17% of that is recyclable. And that's, you know, it's a staggering statistic. And then the other one that's probably just worth reflecting, there's loads of these, but electronic waste. There is one cruise ship of electronic products wasted every year. Every day. That's 50 million tons a year. Now, if you think about 50 million tons in terms of per capita, that's 7 kilograms of electronic waste for every person. That's the equivalent of each of us chucking away 2 laptops, 2 tablets, and 2 mobile phones every year. And the economic cost of that is, you know, 50, 60 billion a year. The GHG cost of that is 6 million tons. And you know, when you think about the purpose behind circular economy, it's addressing that. It's all about enhanced resource productivity, an economy that is more restorative by design, that addresses this horrible linear connection between growth and resource use.
Wow. I mean, I'm writing down the statistics here on food waste, electronic waste, plastic waste, what that means. And as you say, moving into getting out of this uncircular pattern by design is critical. So why don't you tell us a little bit then, David, about the firms, the investee companies that are in your portfolio, who they are, what they do. Just give us a sense of the range of companies and you know, take a bit of time
Sure.
with this.
Yeah, we'll do. I mean, this goes back to your earlier question about helping to define the circular economy and how we look at it. I mean, for us, the circular economy is a lens or a framework, you know, through which to invest. And we, you know, it's very broad. It's sector agnostic, and you take a broad sector agnostic pitch to investors, they look at you and say, go away and think again.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to articulate it and narrow it down. And so we've done that over years. The first area we look at is circular business models, which is an alternative means of consumption. So instead of buying products, subscribe for them flexibly. Now, a great example of that is a business that's growing here in the UK and just recently launched in Germany, which is Bike Club, which is kids' bikes. Yeah, any parent knows that it's a real hassle and economic cost to buy kids' bikes. Your kid grows out of them on average every 15 to 18 months. They spend the vast majority of their life mothballed in a garage or a shed. Bike Club is just a flexible subscription. It gets delivered to you. All you have to do is flip the pedals down or put the pedals on. When your child grows out of it, they come, they pick it up, it gets refurbed, and you're able to scale up to the next size. And that, you know, can be a 10-plus year relationship as the kid gets to an adult bike. Now, the impact of that is these bikes, because they're refurbished between every use cycle or every subscription, they last longer. Bike Club can feed into the design to make them more modular, make the components last longer, more durable. And on average, a Bike Club bike will be used by 7 children over its useful life. A bike acquired or purchased from a traditional bike retailer will be used by 2 kids. So, you know, a perfect example of flexible subscription as an alternative method of consumption and getting rid of ownership. Circular products and materials, another great example. We see a lot of innovation led by circular design around products and materials, and a lot of it is using byproducts or waste products. And I think this this is another trend we're seeing where corporates have woken up to just what is being wasted. Now, whether they come at that from an environmental perspective or an economic perspective or both, doesn't really matter. If they're doing something about it, it's great. And we invested in a business about 15 months ago called Cocoa Green. It's based in Manchester. It uses the waste husks from the coconut production industry. The fibres are extracted, are made into matting, but the pith is extracted and is using some innovative processes, is made into a sustainable growth substrate that's used by professional growers all over the world, growing berries, citrus fruits and salads. Now, that displaces the use of peat or stone wool at a fraction of the carbon footprint. That company, the innovation on that company, and I was glad to see in the word cloud that kind of innovation was very much at the center of it. They have a moisture control technology and they have a safeguard product that reduces water consumption, enhances root growth, protects the crops from pathogens, and therefore increases yield. So there's an economic benefit to the growers of higher yield and higher certainty, and there's a positive environmental impact. And that's the perfect example of what we look for. We have to see a measurable positive impact. We clearly, as investors, we have to see a commercial case as well. But the first filter is it circular, and is there a measurable positive impact against linear business as usual? So those are examples. We also, as I touched on earlier, look at enabling solutions, and that can be tech, it can be innovative products, and there are a range of examples, and one of which we'll come on to talk about later. But those are the three areas we really focus on.
Great, fantastic. And I'm tempted to ask our audience just to give an indication. How many people have already used something like Bike Club? If you have, raise your hands. Okay, if you didn't know about it, but you would use it if you had known about it, how many of you are there? Right, very, very interesting. It's absolutely fascinating, that business model. Cocoa Green also sounds fantastic. Using the matter from that internal lining of the coconut to become a natural fertilizer. That sounds absolutely fantastic. We're going to hear much more about these in a minute. Shall we go on to the investor appetite? Or do you want to talk about some more firms in the portfolio? Because I'm keen to know whether investors are really building their appetite for what you're doing. Do you have people, knocking down the door to say, how can we get into your portfolio? Or do you want to talk about some more of the companies?
Happy to do both. I mean, just briefly touch on one or two others. We've made 13 investments today. I'm glad to say 2 are in Scotland.
Yes.
We're based in Edinburgh. We have a small office in London and operate across Europe. But one of those is based down in Irvine, Green Home Systems, and that's all about retrofitted energy efficiency solutions to domestic properties, primarily properties in deprived areas, qualifying households that under the Energy Company Obligation Scheme, these installations of insulation, air source heat pumps, solar PV are free. And that's obviously cutting domestic emissions, it's cutting fuel bills, it's tackling fuel poverty. So, ticks all those boxes in terms of economic return and impact for us. The first company we ever invested in was a food waste technology business. Winnow that measures and records and weighs all of the food waste in large catering facilities. On average, it's cutting food waste by 53%. Now, for thin margin catering operations, that doubles the bottom line profit. So again, that collinear impact. And that's, for me, I think, the central message of this. The circular economy, because it's restorative by design, because it's enhanced resource productivity, you're getting the environmental impact and you're getting the higher return on capital. And that should create value all round.
And you as the investors getting the higher return on capital because the business is becoming more profitable by being restorative.
Growth.
That
quite often, those credentials, that business model, that solution is the source of sustainable competitive advantage, and that's what we look for in the business. And a lot of the work we do supporting the businesses is about how we capture that, how we measure it, and how we articulate it as part of the marketing strand, and the purpose behind the brands.
So circularity, as you say, becomes the source of competitive advantage for the firm. Yeah, brilliant. Let's talk about the investors then quickly.
Sure.
Is the appetite growing? Who's trying to invest in your funds? Who do you say yes to? Who do you say no to?
Okay, well, I'll keep it brief. We came up with the idea in 2014, really born from my fellow partner, Jamie Butterworth, who was the founding CEO of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And he identified large corporates trying to do this, and he looked at the supply chain and said, what does this mean for SMEs?
Yeah.
They're typically capital constrained, they're resource constrained, they need to come into a positive network where they can collaborate, and that was basically what we tried to do. It took us a long time to persuade investors that that was a sound investment strategy. By 2017, we had managed to persuade some friendly foundations, one or two in the audience today, high net worths and family offices to commit 20 million. A year and a half later, we'd managed to get that to 60 million for the first fund. And we had 2 pension funds, one in Europe, one in the States. But it was an education process, telling people what the circular economy was, trying to, from the bottom up, demonstrate that there were businesses out there doing this that would make a sound investment case. If we then fast forward to 2021-22, when we raised our second fund, we thought we'd be ambitious and try and raise 150 million euros. We ended up raising 215. 80% of that investor base is institutional. So global pension funds, fund of funds, other large corporates, financial corporates. So it's transformed. Now, the great thing for that is hopefully that gives us a scalable investor base now for subsequent funds. So I think we have seen that transformation happen in the finance sector. Absolutely, much more is required. We are at not even a drop in the ocean of what's required. And we need to see that across the equity markets. And we are seeing more and more growth funds with broader sustainable investment agendas, of which the circular economy is one part, both listed and private. We need to see, to Gary's point, we hope to see more and more impact debt solutions coming out to back these sorts of businesses. But it's positive, it is happening, and impact is very much the focus. And I'm glad to say that we appear to have moved on from ESG to positive impact, and the distinction between the two is still somewhat blurry, but we are very much focused on the positive impact, and investors are buying into that.
And you're making the very key point that the companies that you invest in don't just need your investment, they also need banking services, insurance services, and everything else that align with these circularity models. Very key point. Let's do 2 more questions, and then I'd like to see what our audience want to ask you. So the first one is, how is intergovernmental action and public attention of the sort of the awareness raising, public preferences for changing consumption habits, which you talked about at the beginning, or the kind of intergovernmental approach, what happens at COPs? How does that change the environment for you?
I'm probably not the most qualified in this room to talk about that extensively. I mean, there's a couple of points I would make. I think, as I said earlier, we do see a change in consumer behavior. If we do surveys, and we do surveys of Bike Club customers or Grover in Germany, which is electronic product subscription, still the primary driver for them for moving to a circular solution like that is flexibility and convenience. It's not sustainability. It's not environmental impact. That is relevant, but it's not the primary driver. But it's building. And as you go through the younger generations, it's building more and more. So we are definitely seeing that. I think intergovernmental, you've seen things like the European or EU Circular Economy Action Plan, the Green Deal. I mean that's all hugely positive and creates a positive environment, definitely.
Great. And then lastly from me, David, are there any particular rigidities or inhibitors, any regulatory, is there anything that needs to happen at the policy level that would make it easier for you to do what you do?
I think, last night Thomasina mentioned externalities, and it's still clear that the external impact of businesses is not priced in. So the more that those externalities are internalized, and that is a regulatory or legal requirement, I guess. Things like carbon taxes, things like extended producer responsibility, those are sorts of areas. And trying to capture, well, you're the one that's creating the packaging. That's the footprint of it. You have to deal with that.
Yeah.
And you're effectively pricing in those externalities. Yeah. Then I think more movement in that direction would be extremely helpful. I'm concerned slightly, and we are concerned slightly that there is a risk of greenwashing, and there's a hell of a lot of good work being done around ESG, as an absolute given, robust ESG as an absolute given, and then separately on investing for positive impact. And what I hope that there isn't any sort of backlash against greenwashing, and that sort of brings us all down. So being able to demonstrate impact authentically to allow consumers, whether they're individuals or corporates, the chance to compare properly is going to be critical going forward.
Great.
And we need global standards in order to do that, and we're still some way off that.
So it sounds like you're saying ownership of externalities is critical, and then aligning with a really transparent process about what's working and what isn't is really key. David, let's quickly take a few questions from the room. And what I'm going to do, I'm speaking to the audience now, I'm going to try to match the questions that you've asked with the speaker I've got on stage, rather than just taking all the questions, because some speakers will be more familiar with some issues than others. So there's a very particular question here, David, that 11 people have liked, which is, what support do businesses, particularly SMEs, need to become more sustainable and circular? I.e., is it advice, is it strategy, is it delivery, is it knowledge sharing, is it mentoring, as well as funding? What else do they need to really grow?
I think that depends at what stage the business is at. We're a growth stage investor, so these are businesses that are already post-revenue, they've got a proven margin, they've got the requisite commercial traction, they're scalable. The biggest challenge for them is they probably don't have the senior management bandwidth and capacity to then take the business to the next level, and they may be missing experience in certain areas. So, for example, sales and marketing would be an obvious one. So for us, we get involved in a lot of senior recruitment. We have internal operating principals within our team that come from a sales and marketing background who go in and help the companies. So that's the main area. I think at an earlier stage, if you're in the seed and sort of early venture stage, the dreaded equity gap is a challenge, so the need for earlier stage capital is paramount. There, I think it's being brought into much more collaborative networks and working out who you can work with to help progress.
Great. And David, there's another question here that says, a lot of focus on the circular economy is at the manufacturing stage, where huge change needs to happen, making it a long-term strategy. But do you think that more focus should be put on remanufacturing, repair, refurbishment, especially in electronics, which you mentioned?
Absolutely, 100%. A lot of people in this room may recognize the sort of circular economy butterfly diagram, where you've got the kind of outer loops which are recycling. We don't really invest in anything at the outer loop. By that stage, you've kind of lost the game to a certain extent. The internal loops around repair, maintenance, remanufacture, refurb, and even before that, to me, the holy grail is if you get the circular design right and you design for longevity of use, you design for durability, you design for modularity, and therefore ease of refurb and repair. That's what we'd like to focus on.
Great, and I'm going to ask you one more. This is from Michael Dougal. Thank you, Michael, and the 7 people who liked this question. He says there wasn't any reference in what you were describing to construction waste. And as an architect who's trying to embed circular economy principles in all design, momentum's often lost when a project reaches the site. Are you doing any work in the construction sector? He's interested to know if you have a view about that.
We have looked at, I don't know where Michael is, we have looked at a number of opportunities within the construction space. Urban mining, urban mapping. I didn't list all of the horrific areas of waste that there are, and construction's right up there, and concrete use and innovative materials for construction. I think one of the challenges has always been that we've come up against is it's a traditional industry that is somewhat difficult to change and transition, and it's difficult to find the new solutions that have got or being able to demonstrate that requisite level of commercial traction. Yeah. We hope that changes over time, and we'll certainly continue to look at it.
Yeah, great. David, we're going to have to leave it there, but we're very grateful to you for sharing all of this, and I think you're going to be around for a little while.
Yeah, most of the day, hopefully.
You're going to be here most of the day, so people, please do talk to David. And if you've got any investee companies you want him to talk to, I'm sure he'd be very happy to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, David Mowat, thank you.
Thank you.